Welcome to our presentation. I'm Magdalena, and together with Helen, we'll tell you a few words about culture and education in Cuba. Cuba es un ajiaco. Cuban anthropologist Fernando Ortiz compares Cuban culture to a typical Cuban soup called ajiaco, consisting of many ingredients brought together throughout the ages by different people from different origins and cultural backgrounds. This cultural mix has been heavily influenced by Spaniards, Africans, and the indigenous people of the island. Indeed, in the current definition of Cuban culture, the basis of traditions, customs, and beliefs stem from these three main roots. Another great example of the Cuban cultural melting pot is found in its music. Rumba, mambo, cha-cha-cha, their drums have African origins, their guitars Spanish, and some of their wind instruments come from as far as China. After the revolution, Cuba entered the period known as the Golden Age of Cuban cinema. In 1959, the Cuban Film Institute was founded and financed by the government, which propelled the development of Cuban cinema as long as it matched the system's ideology. The first traces of literature in Cuba began with Spanish settlers who described important events from their European viewpoint. However, the first Cuban literary works date back to the 17th century with Silvestre de Balboa's Troya de Quesada and Espejo de Paciencia. While influenced by foreign art movements, Cuban art is characterized by a strong will to self-define the people's national identity. For one thing, painting gained in popularity in the early 20th century with artists like Wilfredo Lam, Guillermo Collazo, and Armando Menocal. Here again, Cuban cuisine incorporates Tainic, Spanish, African, and Caribbean culinary traditions. Local crops such as cassava, corn, and okra were prepared together with African root vegetables like yams and products of the old continent like rice, citrus, and beef.
Sports. Since the Castro regime in 1959, sports culture has been shaped primarily by the following motives: ideology, military, general health, and international prestige. Due to historical relationships with the United States, many Cubans participate in sports that are popular in North America, such as baseball and boxing. Education. The history of the Cuban education system goes back to the time of the revolution. After Fidel Castro took power in 1959, he took care of the impoverished population with the literacy campaign and free education. Thus, he legitimized the socialist government and created the myth of the colossal educational system. However, with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1992, a turning point in a period of great economic difficulties began. At that time, academics left their positions to enter the tourism industry. The low future prospects meant that a lot of young Cubans no longer studied. Education system. The general compulsory education is 9 years and consists of the 6 years of basic education and 3 years of the first level of secondary education. The lower secondary level follows on from general basic education. The initial vocational training can be completed at vocational schools or workshop schools instead of lower secondary level. The upper secondary level is divided into pre-university education and vocational training. In higher education, students in universities can acquire the titles Ingeniero, Licenciado, Arquitecto, and Doctor en Medicina after 5 to 6 years. Afterwards, after 2 to 5 years, it's possible to obtain a doctorado, maestría, or postgrado. Illiteracy. In the first half of the 20th century, 22% of Cubans over the age of 15 were illiterate. After reconstructing the country, the government launched a literacy campaign. Literacy centers were set up, and youth and other volunteers were sent to the countryside to teach others to read. Participation. Participation in university education has fallen sharply in recent years. The large gap could be attributed to the country's economic situation. For many, it is not worth studying because it does not bring any financial benefits, and other jobs that do not require an academic degree bring in more money.